Hi, my name is Melanie and I have looked after more than 50 cats. In this video I want to help you find the right breed for you. If you have a breed in mind, you can simply have a look at the timeline because I will have timestamps for the different breeds that I'm mentioning if you're only interested in one. The breeds that I'm going to cover are Siamese, Bengal, British Shorthair, Ragdoll, Scottish Fold, and the domestic Shorthair, which is the most common one here. What I will cover in this video is we will look at what we know about these breeds, and then I will say what my experience with these breeds is, and basically if I agree, disagree, I will also share some funny stories and some pros, some cons, and that sort of thing. I will tell you which breeds are better for keeping indoors. Yes, even though a lot of people say that generally speaking, keeping a cat indoor is cruel, there are actually quite a few differences in terms of breed and why some breeds are happier indoors than others. So I think that's really important for you to know. If you want to have a flat, if you want to have a cat in your flat, which breeds are more prone to be stolen in big cities? By the way, if you're wondering why I look really hot, we currently have a heat wave in London. So what the internet or ChatGPT is telling me here about the Siamese cat, not the Siamese, the Bengal cat, energetic with leopard-like markings. Yes, my personal experience is also that they are energetic, and yes, they look absolutely stunning, absolutely beautiful, obviously depending on what you would call beautiful. But yeah, they are the ones that I looked after. They have been quite vocal. If you are living in a big city, they could potentially get stolen, although the one that I did look after, she was allowed outside and, well, she hasn't been stolen. However, I think it also kind of depends, like, what area are you in? Is the cat only roaming some back gardens? I mean, you know your cat best. Well, not if you're looking for one, obviously you haven't bought one yet, but all I'm saying is it sometimes varies how far and wide a cat will wander, but obviously you won't know that until you've got the cat. So, but it is one of the cats that you don't see very much outdoors. Honestly, I've never actually come across one just by chance. They're mostly held indoors, but I wouldn't say that they are the best cats to be held indoors. Hey, please tell me the characteristics of a Bengal and what type of person should get a Bengal.
Of course, Bengals are really active, playful, and intelligent cats, and they tend to be very curious. They also thrive on mental stimulation, so they need lots of toys, playtime, and interaction. A good person for a Bengal is someone with an active lifestyle, who can give them the mental and physical exercise they need, and someone who's home often enough to keep them engaged. So not ideal for very quiet, super busy, or super structured households. They need a bit of adventure.
But when you say active, I guess if you're keeping them indoors, it shouldn't be the smallest flat.
If you're keeping a Bengal indoors, they really do best in a space where they have room to run, climb, and explore. A small flat can be okay if you enrich it with cat trees, vertical space, and interactive toys, but they really benefit from a larger area or even a catio. It's all about giving them enough stimulation so they don't get bored or frustrated.
Would you say that Bengals and Siamese are quite similar?
They do have some similarities. Both Bengals and Siamese are really vocal, highly intelligent, and need a lot of stimulation. But their personalities differ a bit. Bengals tend to be more physically adventurous with tons of energy, whereas Siamese are often more clingy, social, and people-focused.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Siamese. It says here, the Siamese cat is vocal, social, striking blue eyes. Yes, again, these cats are absolutely beautiful. But again, also expensive, possibly get stolen if you are in a place where that could happen, or in a bigger city. I actually quite recently looked after a Siamese, and he was certainly very energetic, and he knew what he wanted and when he wanted it. And so again, in my opinion, not the best cat to keep indoors. But then again, if you are letting the cat outdoors, it could potentially be a bit of a worry. I want to tell you a story about the Siamese that I looked after. He would sometimes wake me up in the middle of the night just because he wanted to have a cuddle. That's what I meant with potentially they might want what they want when they want it. So, and I feel like the Bengal and the Siamese are a bit similar in that regard. So it really depends in what you're looking for in a cat. Being vocal, which those two breeds are, means that they meow a fair bit. Is that what you're looking for? Are you okay with that? Or do you like when a pet is a bit more quiet? It's completely up to you. Let's talk about the British Shorthair and at the same time the Scottish Fold. Actually, let's have a quick look at what ChatGPT says about them. So about the British Shorthair, it says round face, calm temperament, and about the Scottish Fold, folded ears and sweet expression. So those two, in my experience and my opinion, are really quite similar. They can be affectionate, however, they can also be a bit cold-ish. They are usually quite good for being an indoor cat because they're calmer, because they don't need you as much. Let's say you want a cat, but you have to go out to work every day. A British Shorthair probably is not as bothered about that as other cat breeds. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean that they don't like any company, but I think they're able to deal with it better than other breeds. Yeah, and like I said, they can be affectionate, but in my experience, they are not as affectionate as other breeds that we're talking about in this video. But what I want to mention about the Scottish Fold is that because of how this cat has been bred to have the very small ears, obviously a lot of people think that's really cute and that's why they're getting this cat, but this comes at a cost that you might not even be aware of. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details, what health issues. However, I really, really want to urge you not to get any kind of breed that prioritizes looks over health. Please, 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 if you really want a specific type of cat, and the British Shorthair is obviously not the only cat that is bred that comes with health issues, see if you can get a rescue one. And obviously you may not be able to. You could just get a British Shorthair. And wouldn't you want your pet to be happy and healthy more than anything else? I really, really urge you to not buy breeds that are compromising pets' health. A funny story about a British Shorthair. Actually, when I think about British Shorthair, no matter which British Shorthair I look at, when I look at the expression, I find that their face is just so expressive. Like, whenever I look at one, I always have to laugh because they can sometimes be so serious looking, but obviously, well, I don't think they are. But I just think that they can be just so funny. And also, they seem to mimic humans a little bit. So they sometimes can sit upright like a human being in a chair. The British Shorthair is a great cat. Can also be an outdoor cat, but if you're looking for an indoor cat, great cat. And my partner's sister, she actually got her British Shorthair as a rescue from an organization as a Let's talk about ragdolls. Ragdolls are so pretty with their blue eyes. I'm not sure if they always have blue eyes, because I recently looked after a cat which, like, the fur was like a ragdoll, the size was like a ragdoll, the demeanor was like a ragdoll, but the eyes weren't blue. So, and the owner didn't know what the breed was because she adopted him. Okay, let's have a quick look. Affectionate and gentle. Yes, affectionate for the most part. I would say out of the ones that I've looked at, and I've looked after quite a few ragdolls at this point, there was only one cat that wasn't like extremely affectionate, all the others were. And there was one cat that was kind of bored of being an indoor cat. But for the most part, that was really only the one experience. All the other experiences did actually show me that ragdolls are really great for being indoors. But then again, the one cat that I spoke about in the beginning who didn't have the blue eyes, he was an outdoor cat, but not in London. But he never strolled very far. Actually, I think he never left the garden. So, is it only the ragdoll that is not very street smart?
Ragdolls are definitely known for being particularly trusting and relaxed, so they're often less cautious outdoors. But they're not the only ones. Any breed that's super trusting or less street smart is more vulnerable outside, so you always want to be cautious with them.
I looked after a ragdoll that was allowed outside, but he never really strolled further than the garden. Is that because he is aware that it's not a good idea?
Yeah, that's really possible. Even though ragdolls tend to be laid back, a lot of them still have a natural curiosity and comfort zone. Some will explore close to home, like the garden, but they often don't have the same drive to rove as, say, a Bengal or a Siamese. So it's possible he just instinctively stayed close because he felt safe.
Are ragdolls to be known to really like a routine?
Ragdolls are definitely big on routine. They often thrive on predictability, whether it's meal times, playtime, or even just nap spots. That's part of why they're such great companions. They find comfort in having a structured day. So if you keep things really regular, feeding at the same time, a predictable bedtime, they tend to settle in really well.
But ragdolls, they are really great indoor cats. They're really funny, sweet. However, I have to tell you, they are the enemy of your carpet. So if you really love carpets, then you may need to say goodbye to that, because they, for the most part, do not care how many scratch pads you're offering them, and they're going to go for the carpet. Except for one ragdoll that I looked after, he didn't go for the carpet. But again, every other cat that was a ragdoll that I looked after went for the carpet. Even the one with outdoor access still went for the carpet. So that's the only downside, but they are incredibly sweet. Their fur is incredibly soft. You'll just have a wonderful time. In fact, people often say that they're a little bit dog-like in the way that they like to be around you. One of the ragdolls I looked after, so funny, he actually liked to play fetch with me. So I threw a ball. Actually, I don't know if it was a ball or something else, but he would fetch it and then I would throw it again. So that was really funny. I think ragdolls are also quite expensive, and apart from the one that I mentioned in the beginning, I am pretty sure all of the other cats were bought from a breeder. No, actually, no, that's not true. There was one other that was rescued. However, it is much more difficult to find a rescue ragdoll. However, I really need to say this because it is extremely important to me. When you get a pet, please, please, please consider to get a rescue cat. There are so many pets sitting in rescue homes that could potentially just sit in a cage for the rest of their lives. And one friend of mine, I don't know if this is true, please tell me in the comments. One friend of mine told me that depending on the situation, sometimes these pets, if nobody will adopt them, will be put to sleep. And I have watched so many documentaries and so many programs about pets that are adopted from a rescue place, and then, you know, they follow that family, like they meet them on day one and then they meet them again a week later or 2 weeks later, and it's interesting to see the progress. There almost always is progress, and sometimes it's really fast and sometimes it's slow, but if you give a pet a chance, they will thank you. They will love you. They will appreciate you. And I think that when there are so many pets just sitting in a cage waiting to be adopted, how can we go to a breeder? The breeding business is just like any other business. It depends on supply and demand. If you're not sure, just look these programs up where people are followed in their process, or ring up your nearest rescue place or go there for a visit, have a look around. I mean, you don't have to make a decision on the spot. In fact, I would urge you not to do that. Do your research and find out, maybe speak to a friend who has a pet if you haven't got a lot of experience. But I think that that pet might be sitting in a cage, but that cat could really uplift your day to day. That's how I see it anyway. The domestic Shorthair. So that is the most common breed in the UK, and that is also the most common breed that I have looked after. Although recently I looked after lots and lots of Ragdolls. However, looked after many domestic Shorthairs. Because I've looked after so many, I actually find it difficult to place them in one category, because what I found is that every single cat has a different character, just like us humans. So one may be extremely affectionate and one may not be much at all. And the best example is, I recently looked after a domestic Shorthair, and he was so independent, just out, in for food, out again, like he was just completely independent. And yes, occasionally he came for a little cuddle, but not very often. But then another one of those that I've looked after on various occasions, very affectionate, almost doesn't like to be left alone very much. Obviously also depends a little bit on their background. So if they were rescued and they had bad experiences, sometimes depending on their story, which by the way, most of the time you don't know the story, you can just adapt. But it really varies. That's why I'm actually curious what the general opinion is here. Generally considered more street aware. Domestic Shorthair, regularly mixed breed cats. Okay, let's ask ChatGPT.
You're very welcome.
Can you tell me characteristics of the domestic Shorthair?
Of course, domestic Shorthair, they come in a huge variety of colors.
My camera died exactly the moment this started speaking. Okay, so let me read this to you. They're super adept. No, don't speak to me now. Stop it. They're super adaptable. Some are independent, others are really affectionate. That's exactly what I just said to you, isn't it? Health-wise, they tend to be pretty robust. I mean, that's also important, isn't it? They often live long, healthy lives. They're usually low maintenance. Those cats usually prefer being outdoor cats. However, I've also looked after a variety of this type of breed who, even if they're outdoor cats, never stroll any further than the garden, and then others do. So again, completely different character. And for the most part, I must say, have been pretty affectionate, have been really funny. Like one that I recently looked after, he had this routine. So when I would sit in the sitting room, so I would like indicate, oh, come on, sit next to me. And so his routine was, he came and sat next to me. I mean, not on the sofa, on the floor, looking at me. And then after like 5 minutes, he'd sit next to me. But then let's say I get up and get something, and then he gets up. But every single time he wanted to come back on the sofa, he went through the routine of just sitting there, looking at me, and thinking about, I mean, I don't know what he thinks about, but I always think about what they might think about. When he would get on the sofa, and he went through this routine every single time. Another one that I looked after various times, I thought it was so funny. He literally just went outside to get some fresh air. He'd just sit next to the cat flap, get some fresh air, come back in. Oh, another story. I think that breed I probably have the most stories because it's the most common cat in Britain. My alarm goes off, he goes off. It was not possible to oversleep because as soon as my alarm went off, he would not stop meowing until I went downstairs to give him his breakfast. I also wanted to talk a little bit about a disease which is called FIV. Yeah, FIV. So basically, if you have a cat with FIV, you can't get that disease. So that's important. The reason I want to talk about this is because when I go on rescue websites, I see a lot of cats that have this disease that are not being adopted. I really would like you to consider a cat like this, especially if you're looking for an indoor cat, because these cats are not meant to go outside and mingle with other cats. Sounds so funny, mingle, as if they're having a party or something. I don't have experience with this type of cat. However, I recently had a conversation with somebody who does. And she said that with this type of cat, first of all, you don't give it any medication. So there's no medication involved. They are as happy and healthy as other cats, except they are more vulnerable to viruses. So their immune system isn't as good. So if they do catch something, then it may be a lot more serious than a healthy cat. And the problem with this virus, and if you adopt one and you know that they have this virus, you can't insure them because it's a precondition and the insurance company is not going to take you on. The thing is, you don't know when or if they are going to catch anything. So you don't know if or when we'll come into a situation like this and whether you will have high vet bills. I don't want to say adopt a cat like this if you're not comfortable with it. All I'm saying is if you are in a position that you could see yourself doing that, then please consider it. And also, you obviously have to think about the money aspect. I also don't want to say that don't adopt them, because there's always the opportunity to reach out to different charities who may be able to help you in a situation like this. Sadly, I don't have any experience with that. I don't know how often charities help with that. I don't know what amount of cash they have available to help with that. If you have any experience with that, then please. And also, I think it's worth considering that if nobody adopts these cats, they're just going to be sitting in that rescue place in a cage, not having anybody to love on them. Okay, yeah, the people who work there, but they don't have the time. It's not a home. Even if you had this cat for a couple of years and then they get sick and you don't have the money to pay for the treatment and you can't figure out a plan of who else could pay for it, then at least you know that this pet had a decent, loving home for those years of its life. I think that people forget that. But now, I want to tell you which cat I would get if I was getting a cat, which I hope I will at some point. I would be open to 3 of them. The British Shorthair, the regular domestic Shorthair, and the Ragdoll. Those 3. And if I really had to choose, I probably would go for the... I don't know. I'm kind of between the Ragdoll and the British Shorthair, because I, in the near future, probably won't have a garden or something like that, an opportunity to always let the cat out. I would get a cat that's happy indoors. Okay, so let's talk about... No, I think that's it actually. Oh, also wanted to mention, a lot of cats will... No, I don't think this is important. Comment below which cat you are thinking about getting, or if you already have a cat, then please comment below what kind of cat you have. If you can add anything to this topic, then I would also be interested to hear about it. And I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!